Because you know there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. Not conspiracy.
It's all about control. To them we just cattle, numbers, battling each other while they creeping in the shadows, scheming, plotting, clocking your every move, locked in your mind, brainwashed until it's rotten. Got the population operating as they want them, symbolically mocking them, thinking nothing can stop them. So open your eyes to the lies of the evil, the poison in the minds and the lives of your people. And every time they lead you down a line to deceive you, and by then it's always too late to see through the veil that they hide behind, cause your third eye is blind. Better take a stand, we running out of time. Ain't nobody coming to save us, fuck what you had in mind. Arm yourself with the truth and jump behind the battle line. Can we turn it around? Yeah, it's possible. Divided we'll all fall, but united we're unstoppable. This is for the world, this is for the masses, attached to the strings being pulled by puppet masters. This is for the youth, searching for the proof, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some truth. This is for the ones waking up from the spell, beginning to discover themselves. Yeah, this is for the youth, searching for the truth, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some proof. Hey yo, the stage is set, the game is rigged, the system isn't broken, it was designed this way, and only the blind obey, give their mind away to these political, parasitical, cynical, criminal-minded individuals, getting you to surrender your freedoms to the hands of the state, with every boogeyman they create, playing they order out of chaos in order to enslave us, distorted our brains to morally degrade us, faces off against each other while they move the pieces on the global chessboard, directing the hordes. I don't come to bring peace, I was sent with a sword, a truth to get you mentally ready for war. Step forth if you got the balls to call out these tyrants, or submit your compliance through silence, cause in this filthy system ain't a single soul to trust. It ain't right versus left, it's a state versus us. This is for the world, this is for the masses, attached to the strings being pulled by puppet masters. This is for the youth, searching for the proof, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some truth. This is for the ones waking up from the spell, beginning to discover themselves. Yeah, this is for the youth, searching for the truth, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some proof. This is for the world. Yeah.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. I am your host, James Cordiner, and I'm happy to be back doing the live stream after a couple weekends off. I think it's been a few weeks since I've been on this show doing a live stream. It feels good to be back. There's a couple of things I want to go over before we really kick it off. I have a little bit of housekeeping to go over here, and let's see. So I'm pleased to announce that this show is now streaming on several different platforms. Those platforms are Odyssey, YouTube, Facebook. You find the stream on Facebook at A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth discussion group. We're on Twitter and Twitch, and also thank you to Mark Passio for aiding me in embedding the live stream to Free Your Mind New England, freeyourmindne.com. Using the Twitch platform, we were able to bring the stream directly to the website, so that is a place you can go to find the stream. Takes a little bit of the headache out of looking through Twitch and whatever. You can also use the chat over there on freeyourmindne.com. I recommend primarily sticking with either Twitch or Odyssey, though, as the main places to catch the show, because Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, they are not reliable when it comes to censorship. I like to keep a free form discussion going on the show, and to try to make it so no one has to censor themselves on this show, because, well, it's just not right. I'm a freedom of speech absolutist, and that's that. Unfortunately, those platforms, they don't feel the same way. So why are we there? Well, we are there because, face it, that's where there's a lot of people. And if we want to be able to reach a lot of people, if we expect to reach that goal of reaching as many people as possible, we kind of have to go into their territory and speak there. And I will remain there until they kick me off those platforms. So yeah, you can find all of those channels or whatever. And if you're watching this there, I suggest that you start going over to Twitch or Odyssey instead of YouTube. And even Twitch isn't that reliable. I mean, it is owned by Amazon after all, but hey, I've seen a lot of stuff go down on Twitch, and it doesn't get censored as far as speech goes. So we're gonna stick to it. I want to remind everybody to go to shatteringtheillusion.info to learn more about the conference that Joe Murray and I are organizing. And that kind of sums up the housekeeping there, but as far as the did it work? This is new. So here we go. I'm going to share this. So as far as the Shattering the Illusion conference, it's going to be on September 24th, 2022. It's, as you can see, a one-day online event about natural law, true anarchy, consciousness, mind control, and the occult. We're going to be featuring a new track from Diesel Automatic and Joe Murray together. They are teaming up to make a kick-ass song for the conference. The speakers, I mean, geez, look at this list of speakers. Who wouldn't be excited for this? I mean, I am absolutely floored every time I look at this list. And, so we got Chris Jantzen, Ivan Oyola Jr. Chris is actually my guest tonight. Ivan Oyola Jr., myself, James Cordiner, Jennifer Rose, Joe Murray, Mark Devlin, Mark Passio, Nathan Redette, Sean McCann, and Will Keller. And I'm just absolutely so grateful and excited to be able to be not only a speaker at an event like this, but to have had my hand in organizing it alongside Joe Murray to bring these people together and further the message of truth that needs to be put out there. And God damn it, could we use that a lot more these days? As each day goes on, we need it more and more. We all have been kind of not blindsided, but I want to say blindsided, but we've all been watching what's been developing across this country the last 2 weeks, and with the shootings and everything like that, and it's very, very sad. Whatever the motives are or whatever happened, it's very sad that these events go down. Unfortunately, the argument still is wrong about taking away the right to self-defense. It's just something that we need to push through and get through to keep going forward, to maintain our rights. And my heart goes out to all the families that are experiencing that type of loss. Many of the people that watch this show regularly know that I have children of my own, and well, these types of situations are why we don't send our children to public schools. If the children aren't in those buildings, then obviously there's no children in those buildings. If somebody decides to do that, I'm trying not to get upset. I'm trying not to go off about this because it's just so, it makes me so angry. I kind of want to talk about a little bit tonight about order followers, Chris, when we can, because this past week with the Texas incident, it's a prime example of just how sick these order following cops really are. When you have a line of parents whose children are in the school screaming at them to go save their kids and they're doing nothing. It's disgusting. So we should want to, so let me bring in the guest here. He's already on the screen. You guys have all been watching him already. So ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris Jantzen from from endevil.life, the End Evil podcast. And so Chris, this is the first time that you have actually been on my show. I've been on yours like 3 times already.
Yeah.
And this is the first time you've actually been able to come over and spend some time with me on my show, or the changing of the hats, if you will. So
yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to come hang out and check out the Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth.
Yeah. So, we got some chat going on here. So we are, I can't see who's on
your,
I think that's probably Will. It just says Facebook
user.
So yeah, that's probably Will. I got to figure out how to do that. But anywho, yeah. So Chris, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do on your show and your approach to things. You're obviously a speaker at the conference. We're going to get into that a little bit tonight too. So just introduce yourself, man. Tell us what you're all about.
Yeah. Like, how do you start that story? I'm your, typical, non-typical person. I don't fit in very well in society. Probably never have. And so, school was always a difficult thing for me because I always felt like something was very wrong behind the scenes, and as I get older and looking back at, being a person who's a victim of the authoritarian society, like I realize how all the ways it's kind of done a number on me, but what's healing for me is recently in the last couple of years, spending my time trying to talk about truth and trying to talk about natural law and creating my podcast shows and having these interviews with people like yourself and other folks who are trying to work on this thing we call the One Great Work Network and the One Great Work. And what is that really? It's trying to make a difference in the future of humanity. It's trying to make a difference in the spiritual battle that we're all involved in. And, when I thought about it all, like really, what's the goal? What am I trying to get at? And I was pretty inspired by that book by Jeremy Locke, The End of All Evil. So I started thinking about, trying to help redefine evil in a way that helps people understand it's something that we can work on, something we can fix, not something that can't be ended. Evil can be ended. We don't have to live the way we're living as a society or as a culture or as communities. We can change the way we live by changing the dynamics of how we do things and how we treat one another. And so, that's what I'm working on. Seems like a somewhat impossible task, but you don't get anywhere by not trying. So luckily, since I started the End Evil podcast, I've had an amazing time. I'm meeting quite a few other human beings like yourself, James, that are open-minded and have come to some pretty major realizations in life. And I appreciate having this community build and seeing things happening like with the Shattering the Illusion conference and our Funnel 2 conference coming together. And, you just see there's a possibility of this thing building, of more people talking about what's right and wrong. And I think the more people that we have having that discussion, the more opportunity there is for that better future that I'm dreaming of for your children and your grandchildren and everybody else's, Yeah,
it's all about the future, right? It's
well, I mean, it's about the now too. It's what we can do in the now, but I think taking that future big perspective in mind, it helps focus and direct us, I guess.
Well, yeah, of course, it's about the now. It's like that's present moment awareness, right? We gotta, keep that in mind. But we set our sights on the future to make sure it's a better one, hopefully. Um, let's talk about the funnel. Let's talk about that. So tell us a little bit more about the funnel conference, because not only is Chris going to be speaking at the Shattering the Illusion conference, but like a week and a half before, or well, maybe 2 weeks before the Shattering the Illusion conference, he's in another one. So he's got a busy September coming up. Tell us about that. I
Yeah,
want to hear it.
September 10th and 11th, funnel number 2 is coming about, and that's going to be a 2-day online conference, and it's pretty awesome. I'm amazed at some of the speakers we're getting lined up for that. Um, it's been a build-up since basically our group started. Originally, we weren't called Natural Freedom Alliance. We were just people meeting to almost talk about our problems in a lot of ways. And after the same people meeting together for like a full year, we started coming up with this idea to make a conference. We got really inspired by the Seed conference that the guys at Cubbyhole put together. And so I was telling our group, there's no reason we can't do this. And luckily, we had enough inspiration within the group to pull it off, and we all put together our own presentation, and it was a great awesome thing. And when Mark Passio started advertising it on his website for all of us, that was just like, wow, that's a big deal. And then we asked him to speak this time around as one of the presenters, and he agreed, and that was pretty exciting. And then we've reached out to some other people that are definitely way more popular than us in the Natural Freedom League, and it's amazing. People are saying yes, and so we're getting some pretty exciting people that are going to be part of this conference. It's going to be a big thing, and so yeah, I got a lot of work to do between now and then to really put my thoughts together and get my presentations where I want them to be, because right now they're still kind of in building land or imagination world a little bit. I'm still working on my ideas. The ideas are really coming together, but I got a lot of work to do. But luckily we got some time, and
Yeah.
it's fun. I really enjoy the process of thinking about what kind of message do I want to craft, and what might be something that might actually help some other people out.
What are your plans for the funnel conference?
Well, I have recently just had a little breakthrough on that. I'm still working on the ideas for the titles, but I think both the conference, I have a similar message, but and I think the message I'm getting at overall that I'm working on to people is one of the most important, if not the very most important things for those of us that have already come to these realizations about truth and freedom and natural law, is our ability to communicate with each other, and our ability to do something as groups, to form groups and to work together to accomplish. We have some major obstacles in front of us as a humanity, as individuals, and as a truth community or a freedom community, if there is such a thing, which sometimes we hear people questioning that. And I feel like that the human dynamics of how to work together is something that I've thought a lot about in my life, and I've had some jobs and experiences that have taught me some unique lessons in those fields. And that's really, to me, it seems like something worthwhile to talk about. So I'm still kind of crafting how the two different messages are going to be, but they're both similar on that subject matter of trust and community building and working together towards solutions. We could talk about these problems on and on, and a lot of podcasts do that, and a lot of shows do that, and a lot of people need to know about the problems, and they need to understand the extent of them. Don't get me wrong, but I'm really feeling the need recently to start working on, okay, what are we going to actually do about it?
Well,
Because
that's
we
the great thing.
take out these evil people and expect the world to be better. That's really, I don't think it's that easy.
It's not. It really isn't. If it were that easy, if it were that easy, we wouldn't be talking about the I guess, peaceful ways to go about changing the world, because that's how they operate, right? They do the violence. So we don't want to like you don't want to turn into the thing you swore to destroy. You know what I mean? That type of stuff. And it's like, as far as some show, I noticed that too, where like, and I get caught up in the problems a lot, and I see it too. Like there's a lot of like a lot of shows that do point out problems, and it is necessary, but there are people like you who are more focused on solutions, and like that is key. Like that, there needs to be the yin and working together, and that's what's so great about the network, is that it's all there. There's a really nice spread of speakers on that network, and
Yeah.
now like there's some of us that are like gathering up, teaming up, and like tackling a lot of major issues. And excuse me, it's like it's a really good thing to be seeing, out there in the freedom community, because it's tough. It's really tough that sometimes you get caught up in the negative and it can consume you. I've seen it. I see it happen to people, not in like necessarily not in this community or whatever, but people in my personal life. I see them get caught up in fear and the self-loathing and everything like that. It's really tough to witness people, going through that. Like I've done that to myself in the past, and kind of, it took a long time to get out of that. And, there's been some people that have influenced me for the better to like break out of that, kind of cycle, or that trend,
Right.
that pattern is probably the better word to kind of describe it as. It's really tough to get through that. And I don't know, that's why I appreciate, guys like you, not more than the people that are pointing out the problem. Because I was actually with Joe Murray and Ivan Oyola Jr. Earlier this week. We were in person. We met up.
Oh yeah. I saw that picture you posted.
Yeah, it was a great time. We recorded a podcast together and everything. And we were talking about this same exact thing. Oddly enough, it comes up tonight. We were talking about that, like how it's so easy to get, caught up in the muck. And what do you do? And it's like, well, you got to look at it. You got to, because how are you going to solve a problem that you don't have any awareness of, right? When you're not even aware that there's a problem, how are you going to solve it? So
You know what it kind of reminds me of? I don't know. Do you ever get poison oak?
I get poison ivy like a motherfucker, dude.
Oh, you guys get the ivy out there. That's right.
I got poison ivy. Dude, I've been hospitalized because of it. I'm not even joking. I've gotten what's called I'll think of it in a minute, but I've gotten it's called cellulitis, where like you get an infection on your skin due to a rash, and then the rash gets infected. Like my arm has been blown up to like this big. Like I can put my hand there. Like I'm telling you, it was like this.
Right.
That was like a few years ago, and my arm was all swelled up like this. And that was in December in New England. And like I got poison ivy in fucking.
So you know
December,
exactly what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sensitive to poison oak. I've had quite a few times.
Yeah.
I've had the shot in the butt. I've been on the prednisone like probably
Careful,
8
Chris.
different times. I've had my run-ins with poison oak, but what I was making me think about it is like, okay, when you get poison oak, like what's the first thing that happens? You start to see the little dots showing up. You pull up your shirt, you're like, why is it itchy right there? And then you find you got one of them little red dots, and then there's another one, and there's another one. Okay. Like once you start seeing those little red dots, it doesn't matter how much you scratch the crap out of them. If you brushed against the poison oak and you didn't wash it off, wherever that oil touched your skin, you're probably going to have a breakout, right? Especially if you're like us and you're susceptible. So, like a lot of the problems we see in the world are like the breakouts, right? Like, okay, there's a shooting now, right? that's like the breakout you're seeing in your skin. Like there's really, I mean, you have to do something about it. The situation bites, right? You know, you got to deal with it. But the real problem is getting the oil on your skin. And that's what you want to avoid. And that's what, you know, the thinking that we're working on, right? Like instead of looking at the problem, which is, yeah, my skin's itchy and it sucks. The problem is that you've got the oil on your skin in the first place, and recognizing that getting that oils on your skin is the problem that you need to avoid in the future, or you need to clean those oils off, right? But the reaction, how you're going to feel about it, you know, that's where people are getting stuck in these things that are happening in the world, and that, you know, things that are happening in the news, they're just like reactionary. We're just stuck on that level of, oh, it itches right now. Oh, there's a red spot, you know? But, you know, I think we need to really look at the problem. Now, someone wrote red dots, monkeypox. So, you know, like what I'm getting at is, you know, just kind of getting a perspective of minds towards learning to look at problems and where they come from, rather than being totally concentrated on the outcomes, which are the things we're experiencing in our society, which are like frustrating. Yeah, there's a lot of evil in the world, right? But how do we stop it? You know, not by just being frustrated with what's going on right now, but by looking at what actually caused this problem and then working at that.
You're right. And we got to like, because it's having that awareness. It's going to raise our consciousness to a higher level, and be able to overcome like what you were talking about not getting the oil on you, right? That brought to mind agorism, with like Samuel Compton III talking about counter economics and getting around the system of economics that we have in place, and making it so that you're not involved with it. And perhaps if enough people did that, there would be some sort of, obviously there would be a change. There'd be something would happen, whether positive or, you know, positive or negative, who knows, but it would happen, you know. It's that's a very good analogy.
There's definitely good connection between trade and freedom, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I always think about like the stuff I've studied of back in times when settlers were coming to this country and there were native people living here, and we always hear about all the fights and stuff, but I look at the other side of that too. There was a lot of trading going on, and that was mutually beneficial. When people are trading goods, you know, they both need each other. You know, you need the furs, I need the wood or whatever it is, goods you have, you know. And so, yeah, that's really important what you were saying about the Austrian economics. Kind of shows those models of different ways to do business with one another that creates more freedom. But yeah, my other analogy, I don't know, maybe it's a far out analogy of the poison oak thing, but I think what I'm trying to get at is that, you know, we really want to start looking at the cause of things, and really a lot of that winds up being like self-work, because I mean, how much can any of us do to affect another person's mind or thinking? It's
and be aware of it.
Well,
very
like,
little.
You know, when you're having a conversation, even with someone that you know close, and you have a difference of opinion, you know, it's rare that conversation actually goes where one person's like, well, have you thought of this? And the other person's like, oh yeah, you know, I was wrong the whole time. You're right. You know, that's not usually the way it goes down. It takes a
it's very rare.
Pretty open-minded and willing person to kind of get to that point where you can actually hear someone's point of view and be like, oh yeah, usually we realize things little by little over time, and it finally dawns on us when we kind of hit rock bottom in some way, or we go through our own problems, right? So, I mean, I think it's real important to talk about stuff out in the open. That's why we're doing podcasts. So I'm not trying to say that's not important. But what I'm trying to say is, like, in my experience in life, it hasn't been that effective trying to tell people or preach to people what's right and wrong in person. I don't know. What's been your experience with that, James? Have you felt like you've gotten through to people in your interactions?
No, there's been a lot of pushback. There's been, but there are people that agree, where they're like, yeah, you know, but then it's like, but I don't live their life. I don't, I don't monitor their activities. I just speak, and if they go, yeah, I get it, then I hope to God that they are actually living according to that, I guess, or trying to live by right and wrong, by objective morality, really a little bit better, and or whatever it is that they're doing. I hope that it's like going through their head. Is this really the right thing to be doing? Am I hurting anyone? Am I messing up here? So it's kind of like that for me, where
maybe just like planting seeds.
I just
just put them out there. Maybe they sprout at the right time.
Yeah, but I just try to remember at all times that like I don't live their life, and I don't monitor all their activities. That would be kind of weird. So like when I'm talking to people and they're agreeing with me, I kind of feel like they're just kind of shooing me away. Like if I just say yeah, if I give them the yups, then maybe this dude will take that stuff and go elsewhere with it. There's some doubt in my mind, but I don't ever. I kind of just like go, okay, move on. I said what I had to say, and like I'm gonna talk to you about it. If you want to talk to me, like this is going to be a part of the conversation. It's not going to be the whole conversation, but it's definitely going to be put in there some way or another. I'm going to be talking to you about it, and it's going to be it's going to be a good time, because I'm not out to hurt anybody, and I'm really not out to like control anybody's life or anything like that. I'm just here to share information, and it's up to you to take it. That's kind of like what I tell people is like, I'm not trying to take control of you or anything. I just want to share this information with you, and that it's important and that you should consider it. Like, that's usually part of what I say to people, but I get pushback a lot where it's like, well, and then I never like, sometimes it's like they just kind of go and change the subject and you feel like weird. You're being pushy, but it just needs to be talked about. Yeah.
I've had a lot of those moments, right? We're all talking about something, it's going around and around, and then I say something and then I stop talking and it just goes quiet. And somebody just brings up some different subject and the whole conversation goes a different way. And I'm like, well, I'll never know what happened there. Maybe they liked what I said. Maybe they're still thinking about it. Maybe they just couldn't soak in. You never know, but what I'm getting to by bringing that up is that there's a breakdown of communication in our modern style of living. And I think it's been accentuated in recent, last 100, 200 years, especially with modern culture going the way it's going. And it's strange because we have more methods of communication technology wise than we ever had before. However, person to person, in person, personal communications have gone way downhill, it feels like to me. And, I think about like times when people writing letters with a quill and a pen, by candlelight, and how, that takes a certain amount of initiative, so you got to keep the oil in the lamp. You got to have your quill full of the ink. Where did you get the ink? Ink. You got this container probably of ink that's all dangerous to spill. It's like there's all this art to it. Like if you don't get the right amount of ink on the quill. So it might seem like I'm going off on a tangent, but what I'm getting at is when I think about it in simpler times, when people were forced to communicate in simpler ways, the communication a lot of times was more effective. Like if you wrote a letter to someone and took all that time, you're really thinking about what you're going to say, and then if someone has to ride a horse, hundreds and hundreds of miles to get that to someone, that's like someone's putting a lot of energy into it, right? Whereas modern, it's kind of like throw away. You could just say whatever. People can just type whatever and throw it in there. It's like trash. We're just throwing it out all the time. And in a way, people don't take their words as seriously. They just throw them around, And we have this lack of ability between people to effectively communicate with each other in a way that we really understand what each other is saying. And so our culture is so shattered and so fragmented that it's easy for people just to be like, oh, screw you then. I'm not talking to you anymore. You know, I'm not going to call that guy anymore. Whereas in a lot of places and times in history, you could think where people really were kind of dependent on their community because of trade, because of resources. And, you know, there's a community involvement with family too. So you're tied in with the people you live with. You can't just decide, oh, I just don't want to deal with that guy anymore and never go there again. If that's where you live and that's where your whole community is, you know, like there has to be a way to settle these issues and resolve issues. And I think people have figured it out all through time, but we've gotten really lazy in modern times at being able to resolve conflicts and be able to have debates, being able to have a way to decide things to the point where people feel like they can't do it without authoritarian structures of control to do it
Right.
for them. And they're scared of that because they really don't know how to handle things. They don't know how to hold a court or have a meeting with an arbitrator or come to a decision on something when people disagree. They just, oh, fine, you do your way, I'll do my way, you know?
Yeah, like the agree to disagree kind of mentality is kind of troublesome, you know, when you start thinking about it, where it's like, you know, you're a bit there about people not being able to, you know, resolve conflict. I mean, resolving conflict takes courage to be able to sit with a person and address like the airing of the grievances, to like kind of give a Seinfeld reference there. But that takes courage to be able to sit with a person and be like, hey man, like what you did is messed up and here's how I feel about it, you know? And like that's kind of like what it made me think of, was like that courage aspect that a lot of people are lacking. They can't do it on their own. They abdicate that kind of ability and responsibility to some sort of, like you said, authoritarian mediator who's gonna be like banging a gavel or something like that, where it doesn't need to be that way, in my opinion. What do you think about that, the courage aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a lot of times in my life where there's been some sort of, I got a couple real simple, good examples actually that I've heard about recently. One was right in our backyard. Um, there's this really neat spot in the back of our backyard where it's kind of like a little shaded area and there's some trees and we like to kind of hang out back there in the evening. It's just a nice, calm place. It feels like a little paradise, right? A little oasis back there. And the neighbor, it was doing some work on his house right on the other side of the fence, probably redoing his whole backyard there and everything. And when he's done, he puts up this bright motion detector light. And this light is so bright that that whole peaceful little area is just washed out in this like floodlight. And it comes on and off throughout the evening or at night, and it's like, for a while we were getting pretty frustrated with it. And we'd be sitting out back thinking, man, that guy's light just ruined our whole yard, and we were feeling kind of mad about it. And sometimes we would even kind of talk a little bit loud, maybe hoping. And I kept saying, I should probably just go talk to those people, we probably let it bug us for a couple months. One day out back there, we get to talking to the guy and he's a really nice guy. And we say, oh, hey, do you mind turning that light down a little bit? And he's like, oh, sure, no problem. And he did that very night, and it's not nearly such a big deal anymore. Another similar story, a friend's house. This was back kind of when COVID, when people were, a lot of people were staying in different places than they normally would. This guy, my friend, right at his backyard, someone pulled like a big giant Winnebago type camper right up against his fence, parking out on the street. It's a public parking area, but like it's so big that it's like right over his yard, and their whole family's kind of noticing it. They're a little irritated about it. And then they start hearing noises, like what sounds like yelling or fighting or something, right? And they're convinced that someone's getting beat or something in this thing. And they're, having these conversations in their house, like, we should call the police. We need to call the police on these people, right? And I can't remember if they did or not, but what wound up happening is it turned out that inside that vehicle, there was this young kid who had like a problem, like a handicap of some sort, where he would really yell and scream and freak out. And his dad was doing his very best he could with this troubled child. But, it wasn't anyone getting beaten. It was actually the opposite story. It's someone caring for a kid that needed care, a troubled kid, right? And so, we make up all these stories in our mind and we start thinking bad things about people, or, like I did. I was imagining, these neighbors, like with that bright light, like they were doing that on purpose or something, and they were imagining this story of someone getting beaten inside their car. It's so we all watch these scary TV shows and movies and this hype on the news, and people are really suspicious of their neighbors, and they think that people are out to get them, where the truth, what I've actually experienced being out in the world and even on long driving trips, and like whenever I've run into problems or just needed to talk to someone, it's actually not that hard to meet a decent, average, nice person. Most people seem to be wanting to be good people, And so what I've come to realize is that we're just really shitty at communicating. And if we're better at it, so many problems get solved so easier, Like if you can just go talk to someone about an issue instead of calling the police on them, you might realize you never needed to do all that, And it didn't need to come to that more often than not. And so I think what we really need to work on in the freedom community, if we want to be free of needing police, that means that we need to be able to self-govern. That means that we need to have strong enough communities that when a problem happens, we can respond to it. Well, how do we do that in the situation we're in right now? Because if some situations I can think of, if I tried to respond on my own, I would probably wind up in the jail, because the cops are like, that's our job. You're not supposed to defend yourself, right? You're not allowed to have a weapon in this area or whatever it is,
You're not allowed to go into that school and save your children from somebody that's trying to murder them.
Right? I mean, they're going to say things like that. Ridiculous things that don't make sense because people's morals have gotten so flipped around for so many years of getting used to this weird way of doing things, that where we ourselves and our own ability to communicate with each other and pretend like we can't do it. It's too hard,
Yeah. I like what you said there. That was really brilliant points. If we find a way to gain that respect for one another, to show that and be like, hey, go and knock on your neighbor's door and explain the situation, and then like the cops not being called and everything like that, it takes that entity out of the equation altogether, and it slowly chips away at people's confusion when it comes, like people are confused a lot of the times that they need these entities, these government institutions and everything like that, where that it's a necessity when most of the time there is no need for an outside force of any type to come in and mediate a situation where a little bit of respect and a little bit of understanding is shown to your neighbor, for instance. That is enough to resolve an issue. Like you said about talking to your neighbor about that light. How many people might go and call the cops about something like that?
Or even
you know what I mean? Like something
right
ridiculous.
off and like go shoot the light out with a BB gun or something,
Yeah.
It's
I like everyone
easy to
that's listening. I'd like everyone that's listening to
conclusions, right?
realize how I chose my words very carefully about that. I do not think that the police are absolutely necessary, and that the government is absolutely necessary. It's not. I'm sorry. I'm just talking about an outside force coming into a situation to mediate where people could have done it for themselves. Any of that, sometimes it's needed, but that's what families are for. I have a situation in my own family going on right now where other members of my family might have to come in and mediate a situation between myself and another member of my family where there's no communication there. So we're working towards something like that, because it's really difficult. But I don't know. I wanted to to talk a little more about that, but not about my personal situation, but what I had said about that.
No, I mean, that'd be a key point. Like if there's ever a community or people are trying to create some kind of system of working together to get away from the current structures in place, you're going to have your own way to deal with things, right? We're gonna have to have a way to deal with conflicts. People are not going to get along well. Most
Yeah.
human beings on this planet right now are traumatized and brain damaged, including myself to some extent. You know, I've lived through a very toxic world, and it's full of people doing a lot of wrongdoings and calling them right when they're not. And it leaves us kind of messed up in our head, and we're traumatized, and we all have these like emotional issues, you know, and people try to pretend they don't, and they're all put together, but those people have their issues too. There's no way you can live in a soup of evil like we do without it creating some issues for you, you know? So we're in a bad spot in that way. And it's important for us to recognize, okay, that's what we need to work on. That's what we should be working on with our kids when they're really young. And good parents do, you know, most good parents try their best to try to teach the kids when they're really young, like, this is how we treat people. This is how we don't treat people. You know, we don't hit someone because that hurts them. How do you feel when something hurts you? Right. And then from there, we're supposed to keep learning more about, you know, how to not harm each other and how to live together. But instead, we start teaching how to individualize and fragment and place blame. And the teachers start to the students, right? And it's more about whether you did what I told you than it is about, did you figure out what's best for all of us, which is the way we should be to think, you know, from my point of view, a more holistic way of thinking. It's not just about what's best for me. It's what's best for me and my community, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's very difficult though with children because, you know, it's very repetitive, you know, but that's just the nature of things. I mean, there's also the truth that all kids are different, and all kids, they learn differently, you know. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, you know. And the patience and everything that they're going to have later on in their life is something that they're kind of absorbing through watching their parents or guardian, and they're going to model their patience. For instance, just to use patience as an example, but there's a lot more that they just happen to, they model everything off of what they see from their parent or guardian, right? But I like using patience as an example because it's like the saying goes, patience is a virtue. Like, you can teach somebody mathematics by writing it down. You can read a book, teach them how to read. You know, you can speak about history and teach them through literature. All these things that you can do with like physical means, right? But teaching how to act, that's physical, of course. You're going through your actions and everything like that. But there are other things that are more like kind of metaphysical, you know, like, and I believe that patience is one of those things where, I mean, it's through your actions, of course, but it's one of those things that it's not like you don't sit there and go, this is how you be patient. No, you do that. You like, you know, like you don't, there's no checklist. There's no like curriculum about here's how you be patient. Here's a bullet point presentation about how to be patient. Like, no, it's just you practice it every day and you go through it, the motions. And, you know, when you do, like, I have a temper, and it's something that I daily struggle with, where I have like these points of like guilt where I feel like, oh, geez, like, you know, but it's an emotion. It's an emotion. So what am I supposed to do? Like, not feel it? So when that emotion does come out, and, you know, of course I'm in control of it. I wasn't always that way, but I mean, these days more so, and every day, you know, I get a little better after, you know, but like these days I'm very much in more control. We all have weak points, right? We're only human, but then it's like after, you know, oh, I lost my temper. Well, it's not good, but I have to admit that I'm wrong, or that I was wrong if I was wrong, and talk about it and be like, well, you know, we don't want our emotions to be in control of us. You know, we want to be able to feel them, but we want to be in control of our emotions, you know, be able to know why we're feeling that way and everything. This is something that we go through with my son right now, who's, you know, just a little boy, and he's learning all this stuff. He's the world is just coming at him from all the angles, and he's just like, he's growing up very quickly. It makes me sad sometimes how quick he's growing up. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we're kind of going through right now with him. Is something I find myself saying to him a lot, is you can't let your emotions be in control of you. You need to be able to find a way to understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, and to be able to work through it, you know, and to not have these freakouts and meltdowns and everything like that. But he's just a little kid. He's going to learn how to do it. You know, he's got to, and there's no way for me to sit him down and, like I said, and give him like a PowerPoint presentation or read a, you know, it's not going to happen that way. I just don't see it. You know, maybe there's a book, but I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm already an adult, and if I were to go look for a book about how to deal with your emotions, I'd probably end up finding a book with like adult like adult material in it. You know what I mean? Like, this is a book for adults. I can't read that to a 5-year-old, you know. But I suppose there's probably books out there, but it's just like, you know, we're taking it head on over here, you know.
Yeah, like every day is a new lesson, right? For you and the
Yeah.
kids. And, you know, having kids is like the hardest school in the world. It forces you to learn patience in a way that you never thought possible, you know, and it tests your patience daily and hourly sometimes,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And patience is a big part of communication. Listening to someone long enough to hear what they're really saying so you can help them with what they need, you know. And usually that's what's going on with kids. They have some kind of need or something they want, and they're trying to figure out how to get it, you know. And a lot of ways they're going to try to get it aren't going to be good ways, right? And so as a parent, we patiently try to guide them towards, you know, there's a better way to get what you want in this world, you know. But what's sad is that, you know, a lot of the push of our culture, of our society, of our school, of our programs in place, as soon as you are old enough to start talking and speaking and thinking, you're being guided towards this world of um, self gratification, of gratification of the ego,
Yeah.
of feeling good about yourself because of what you have or what you've owned, you know, rather than getting back to that, you know, those core things that we deal with when kids are really small, which are about, really, when you think about it, you're building trust with this little human being. You know, every time that they did make a mistake and you correct them, they learn, oh, he wasn't trying to hurt me, he was trying to help me. You know, it did kind of hurt in the moment because he spatted my, you know, he patted my butt a little bit, but now that he's able to talk to me, he's explaining to me carefully and patiently instead of hitting me in the butt. You know, like, it's hard to teach someone when they don't have any language yet, right? Because you don't have the words, and then they don't know how to understand what you're saying, you know. But as they get older, then you're able to start. You know, I know there's a big disagreement. I stopped short there because there's a disagreement. Always been this disagreement in the voluntarist and anarchy community on whether kids should be spanked or not. And so, you know, I accidentally brought up that subject. Sorry, probably shouldn't have brought up that subject. It's a sore subject. And then, just like so many other sore subjects, we got to be careful what we say around each other because people get all triggered, right? You know, but if we're if every time you have a conversation with someone and they're always patient and calm, you learn that you're safe with that person, and it builds trust. And so that's what I was talking about with kids. As they grow up, you learn to build trust with them, and you learn to gain their trust, and they learn to gain, you know, your trust, you know, back and forth, right? And their own, as they learn how to do things. So man, I kind of jumped around a little bit there, but
It's okay. I do that all the time. You know that. I jump around all the time.
yeah,
You
I
know?
guess I didn't want to get sidelined into the should you spank your kids or not conversation. To me, that's not a worthwhile conversation right now. The point I'm trying to make is how we learn to get along with one another, and kind of comparing that to how we raise kids, where we learn how to trust one another over time and what works, right?
Yeah. What works, what doesn't work, you know. It's it's a hell of a job. It's the hardest job ever, you know?
Like kids,
And
they want to get their way by screaming, right? Because when you're a baby, I've thought about this. This is an interesting dynamic. When you're a baby, you scream at the top of your lungs, and that sound, it like drives into an adult's brain like a screw, right? You can't not answer that sound. But
yeah,
as kids get older and they learn to communicate with you and use words, you know, as a parent, you're like, use your words, you know, trying to get them to start communicating with you in a reasonable way instead of screaming at you. But some people never learn that. And you got full on grown-ups that still think they can just get their way by screaming and yelling at people. And some of those people are like running the world, and they're still living at that infantile, you know, level of maturity where they haven't learned how to communicate with other people in an effective way to get what they need, because they don't have to. They got enough money and power. They can just make people do it or scream at
yeah,
them, you know?
yeah. I mean, all of the people that are running the world have the do what I say or else mentality. Like that's like the first part of the job. They're all these they're all these big children. And it's funny that like we're talking about this because like that's also a big problem like in the world anyways, is that the prolonged adolescence is a huge problem, where it's like, well, where there's comes a point in every human's life where they have to start making hard decisions that are going to impact them for the rest of their lives. They have to step up to the plate and start taking responsibility for themselves. And unfortunately, I think that like that time keeps getting pushed further and further back in individuals' lives. Now, the world is changing. There are things that are going on in the world that are changing, like technology and whatnot is always getting better. And there's always stuff that's changing. So like, I'm not saying that there's always like a set time for everybody, or because like I said earlier, everybody learns differently. Everyone's on a different learning curve and everything like that. They're ready at different parts of their lives, but it's just seems to me that it's just more and more time goes on in individuals' lives before they're actually expected to be an adult, where, okay, now it's time to be an actual adult, with like the school systems and everything. Like, it's a tough subject to get into, to formulate my thoughts properly, to be able to clearly communicate this. But it just seems that like that this is another problem that we're facing with this prolonged childhood to keep people children. I think that there's a lot that goes into that as far as like emotional states, when things are being driven into people's minds through fear. I think that a lot of people succumb to fear because they haven't really grown up to have the courage to be able to rely on themselves and to be able to be, like a well-planted tree, to have those roots, to be able to be self-reliant, to be confident in their place in time. These things that get taken from us, or maybe not even taken, but are never given to us, these or taught to us, because it is an ability that everyone has. But it seems to me that it's also something that needs to be taught. It should be a part of education on how to do it, because you're going to learn how eventually, but it's like whether or not you've learned that ability soon enough to actually have it make a meaningful impact on your life for the rest of your life and all the people that you're going to come across throughout your life from that point on, or even to make up for your shortcomings, which we all have. We all have shortcomings. We have to allow ourselves to, because we're, again, humans. We make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are bigger, sometimes they're not so big. But when we finally come to the realization that we're adults and that we're gaining confidence, some of us do, get to that point. Like, sometimes you got to go back and talk to the people that you kind of maybe screwed over in the past. If you're that type of person that has that kind of conscience, where you want to make amends to people, like, and be like, I was wrong about that. I'm sorry. I realized that, like, that's a big step. And that comes back to reconciling differences and everything like that, of like being able to talk about to confront people and to talk about differences and talk about disagreements and everything, having that courage. But I don't know, I see it as a big problem that's been going on for a very long time. And like I don't know, I want to do more work on like helping people gain courage and to help people gain confidence to do the right thing, to learn the difference between objective right and wrong, like to learn that difference and to do the right thing, because I think that's what's holding back a lot of people is they're not confident that it will produce that learning objective morality and actually forming a life around that, and that it's not going to produce results that will be beneficial to them. And it's a tough mental barrier to break through when it's like, well, are you really I want to ask like people, are you really prioritizing what's meaningful, or are you putting first materialistic things? Are you living in the ego? Are you a Satanist? Like I want to ask those questions, but it's very offensive things to ask to most people these days. They'll be immediately turned off by all of it.
Mhm.
But I don't know. It's like, see, I can go on rambles too.
Well, the thought you stirred in me was like, I'm looking at the tree behind you with the roots in the ground, and you were talking about, each of us is a tree, but our culture, what it does is it like puts us in a little cultured petri dish. So we're each on our own little island, whereas the way a tree is supposed to grow with its roots intertwining among the ground and the roots of the other trees and the rocks. And what we're really lacking is that community aspect, that I've described probably existed in many, many native cultures where you need your community because it's part of your survival, and
Absolutely.
all these people, right? Your cousins and your uncles and your brothers. Where I grew up, I didn't have that community, and I think a lot of that confidence you're describing comes from the support of a community, and knowing that you're doing the right thing and that you're on the right page is because there's a long history of doing the right thing, right? And we don't really have that in our modern culture. We're all kind of marooned on islands. A lot of us don't know exactly where we're from or who our tribe is. We've been scattered with the winds
Yeah.
because there's been so much fragmentation, and disagreements between people, and um, all the things we've seen talked about in all the alternative podcasts, all the problems in the world, right? Um, Between wars and technologies and um, propaganda, people have been taught and they've gotten used to a lot of name calling back and forth, a lot of this is our border, this is our area, if you come near here, rather than, really working on the people you're with and trying to like communicate with them and build a community with the people you're around. We're expecting someone to ship us things from another country and some guy we've never met to make decisions for our day-to-day life.
Mm.
It's just silly. It's just wacky when you think about it, when you put it into perspective. What we need to do, given this situation, is those of us that do come to recognize that the tree of life, we need to work on this interconnected um, web of people that care, right? So we need to build a stronger community. We need to work together. That's how you win a battle. That's how you win a war, by having a strong team. That's how you win a game, by having a strong team. There's no one person that's going to win the basketball game or the football game. There might be one person that scores a lot of, that happens to be the one that throws the ball in the hoop. But without the other guys throwing him the ball or blocking the defenders, you're not going to get there. And so we're trying to do a one-man football team with everything we do. And that's like, it's hard to have confidence when you're in that situation, Now, some people are more lucky than others and they have a lot of family members, but that can also be a detriment if they all don't get along, as you were saying, and
Yeah.
there's not systems in place or methods in place to arbitrate and deal with situations, you know?
Yeah, it can be. The family structure can be something very tough. You want to hold on to it and have it be something that always seems to be strong, but it gets chipped away at over time. It's tough, man. It's tough. Um, the hardest disagreements to like really come to terms with and to really like work through seem to be the ones that you have with your immediate family members. In my experience, this has always been the case. Wherein, like, whereas a disagreement with a classmate, for if you want to go back to our time, and if you spend time in public schools, or it doesn't even need to be a classmate, but even just a friend, disagreements that you've just had with a friend are easier to walk away from and to kind of disregard, because at the end of the day, you really don't have much of a spiritual attachment to that person. But the family members, it's like you're from the same family tree. It's like this spiritual connection that you have. It's a very difficult thing to get over, and you want resolution. Like that's what I'm struggling with right now, is people that I love fiercely. I'm just in the dark. I have no idea. I really just don't. And I haven't been spoken to, and it's like, what's going on? And that like the asking the question why has produced no results, and it's a tough thing to get over. Whereas if it were a stranger or perhaps a friend, I mean, there are some friends that you have a very strong bond with, a very strong connection with, but it's not the same. It's not the same feeling.
Mhm.
But like, this is what brings it back to, keeping that strength of like the community, and our strength comes from our family first. Like that's just, what I'm really trying to say. That tree behind me that's the Yggdrasil. It's the tree that holds up the 9 realms in Norse mythology. And it's a very powerful piece of symbolism, where the roots are strong and the branches are strong. The trunk, you look at the trunk there, it's like a rope. It's twisted up and it's intertwined with one, and there's like it's like the Gordian knot in a sense, where it's just there's no breaking it apart. And it's something that I like having in my thoughts when I'm doing the shows and everything, because it kind of puts that idea in my head where where like it's all intertwined, it's all connected, and everyone that I talk to, we're all connected. And that idea of connection between me and even people that I haven't met, it's something that I have rattling around in my head constantly. And I kind of walk on eggshells from time to time when I'm having interactions with people, because um, I realize how delicate situations can be these days with how on edge everybody is. It's very delicate, a very delicate situation where people are just ready to snap at a moment's notice over what could seem to me, or somebody else, as not a big deal. Somebody's just ready to turn it right up to 100 over what seems like nothing. um Maybe maybe it could be a disagreement about something that's just like very superficial to me, but it's like perspective, right? It's like a point of view. But um it's very tough to gauge that these days, where like, you could be talking about something as like, oh, you could even bring up like something about police, and people are just ready to just go off about it. Like, it's like, well, like what these people do is like fundamentally wrong. You see it like as one thing, but like there's very little, if anything at all, that is done by these people that it could be considered the right course of action. They direct traffic. That's probably just about the only right thing that they fucking do these days. It's like, it's just, and people are just ready to just snap. You can't talk about anything with anybody. It sometimes feels that way. Have you ever come across stuff like that where you just get that impression off of somebody where it's just,
That's why I'm coming with the point of view I'm coming with this week, is just I'm seeing how much, like you were saying, even with close people, our closest, most loved people, sometimes it's really hard to get along. But I see out in the public how divided people are, and I see what looks to me like a slow breakdown of society, and I'm thinking about it, and I keep thinking about it myself, like, what is it going to really take to survive what's coming, for the next generations? What wisdom or help could I offer if someone did, come to me like, what should we do? I'm like, well, the way things are going, what I think we should do is work on working together.
yeah.
If we can, I remember one time I went to this thing, it was like in Mexico, and it was like a church group helping to build a house, and it was a block house, and there was truckloads of blocks coming in, and there were like 30 of us, and we were standing in a line, and the first person would grab a brick and toss it to the next person, and then that person would toss it to the next person, and we moved like an insane amount of blocks, and it just worked super smooth. All you had to do is just stand there and keep tossing to the next guy. What do you call that? The fireman brigade, right? With the water buckets.
Yeah.
But I've seen things like that where you see, if people all just stand in a line and do this motion, look, we get this job done really quick. It's amazing. And there's a lot of things we do. Like I said, team sports, you see it, hospitals, you see it, construction jobs, you see it, where people, military, you even see it, where people work together and do these complex operations. We need to be figuring out how to do those in the freedom movement, otherwise we're not going to be very effective, and we need to work on our skills of dealing with each other and our own families so that we can make it through what's coming, which things are probably going to get worse from here because people are not living in a moral way, and decisions are being made on a mass scale that are not in line with natural law, that are opposing natural law. And, the belief is prevalent that we can just keep doing ridiculous things and making up our own rules and forcing them on other people, and nothing bad's going to come of it, and everything's going to be fine. But that's just not the case, So I guess the wisdom I'm trying to share is our preparation for what's coming is working on our people skills, essentially.
Yeah. When I was talking to Joe and Ivan earlier this week, or last week, whatever, Monday, when we met up, I was talking about like doing the podcasts and being able to take a break and stepping back from doing it in this way, and being able to concentrate more on people that you come into contact with in your everyday life, and how important that part of it is. And like, we can't, I was just trying to encourage the listeners and Joe and Ivan that, like, getting caught up in this one way of communication when it comes to, fucking podcasting, it can be very, very helpful, but it's like, well, what about the people that you come into contact with on a daily basis when or if this whole thing goes down in a ball of flames, or goes up, when it all collapses, if it all collapses, you're going to be without the internet, perhaps. You're not going to be able to podcast about it. You're going to be stuck with the people that are your neighbors, the people that are down the street from your house, the ones that you run into at the store. These are the people that you're going to be around. And these are the people honestly, these are the people that we should be trying to reach, that's why when I've seen like Will Keller and John Wydogan, right?
Roland, yeah.
Roland. All right. Why did I think Wydogan? Sorry.
Well, that's his last name. He uses both names.
Oh, okay. I thought so. I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
it's confusing. It's not your
It
bag.
is. All right. Well, anyways, when I see those guys with their signs and pamphlets and their information that they're sharing with the people in their community, it makes
It's inspiring, right?
it makes me feel really good to see that, you know,
Mhm.
and I applaud them, you know, because they have the time and the focus to do something like that. I wish I had the time and the focus to do something like that. I really don't. But what I do is I do try to talk to as many people as possible about you know about objective morality and just being like, hey, like let's not be at each other's throats. If I see that the conversation that's necessary to have in the conversation. Now, I just kind of like also just kind of lead by example, where I'm not, you know, lying and cheating and stealing my way to anywhere. I want to earn my relationships. I want to earn, you know, my living, you know, whatever that means. And that's kind of how I just kind of live my life, and hope to God that nobody tries to hurt me. And I don't, you know, like I just kind of try to model my way of life after the print, like live by the principles. And that way, when I go to try to speak to anybody about them, because I speak to my coworkers about it all the time, you know, it's really tough to find the time to, like, you know, get with like neighbors and stuff like that. But that's why I wear shirts and and like I
Yeah.
just, you know, that's
Walk
why
around
I
with this shirt on, and every once in a while, someone might say something, right?
right. I was thinking about making a shirt that literally just says like "Ask me about natural law," like just have that on the shirt, and it's just like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's a good
maybe
idea.
somebody will actually come up and be like, okay, I'm supposed to, because you know that there's those guys out there that'll be like, haha, I'm gonna go and do that now because the shirt told me to, and it's like, okay, that's a good that's a good that's a good shirt. That's a good way to get people's attention. Like you're telling them, come over here and ask me about this, because some people need to be told that, like, I'm going, you know, you come over here and get in my face about something, and they're willing to do that because they want to feel like they're the ones steering the ship. They're the ones steering the conversations. It's up to them. They are the ones initiating it, right? It's nice to consider a person's feelings about initiating a conversation about these things. You know, when you have information to share, you want them to be like comfortable. And if they're the ones coming up and saying, hey, what's this you got on your shirt, what's your shirt about, you can be like, oh, okay, well, you got like 5 minutes, I can just give you, you know, it's never going to take 5 minutes, but hey, um you know, it's about this. Go to this website and watch these videos or whatever. If you have the time, uh, go and find somebody that's going to be able to speak to you about it the way that you appreciate, you know? And I was thinking about that this past week, like maybe I should just make that shirt and have that shirt on from time to time when I'm out in public.
That's a
And,
great
you know,
idea.
and like I actually have a shirt available in my store right now, shameless plug, um, that just says, it's a crown with a circle and the X going, the line going through it. It's a crown, and it says, keep calm and learn natural law, instead of keep calm and whatever those shirts
Yeah,
say. And it has the crown with the circle and the line going
yeah,
through it, like no monarchy, no external authority type of thing.
yeah.
And you know, I was thinking about, you know, how do I, for me, because I'm also the type of person where I got to respect my own level of comfort when it comes to social interactions, right? And it's like I can't just go and jump in people's faces and feel comfortable doing that. I like it being somebody comes to me and initiates it, you know, instead of me, because it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable, like somebody might not be listening, you know. But I don't know. I kind of gauge it when it comes to like every interaction. You know, what's this person's? How do I do? Are they really paying attention? You know, type of thing. And yeah, and I go from there. But when it comes to, like, you know, close friends, relatives, and coworkers, I got no problem just being like all about it. You know, no, I got no
Mhm.
problem at all. But when it comes to like neighbors, it's a little bit more difficult because it's like, so, you know,
Well, and
I
that's the realm of trust and faith, right? Like if you don't trust someone completely, you know, there's certain places you're just not going to go with that person until you build that trust up, you know?
yeah. But with like people in my immediate community, so here's the thing, like I'll speak to friends and family members and coworkers, right? But when it comes to like my neighbors or whatever, it's a little different where it's just like that's where like just my actions. I say, you know what, maybe I can't spend an hour and sit down with these people and talk about all these topics, but I live next door to them and I'm going to be here for a while. So maybe through my actions, I can, you know, they can just see that like, oh, Jim's a good person. You know, he's not out to hurt anybody. And they all seem like good people. They don't seem like they're out to hurt anybody. So maybe we can get along. Maybe we can work together and everything. Every interaction I've had with my neighbors, and I can say every interaction with my neighbors and most of the interactions I've had with people in my community have all been positive. Now I do live in kind of a one of those types of like small cities where, you know, there are some thugs. There's some people out there that are having some troubles, and there's people out there that like to vandalize and everything in my community. And you know, but that's where natural law comes in, where it's like we have the ability to defend ourselves if somebody comes onto my property and they're trespassing. Well, they're made aware that they're trespassing and they get one chance to leave, and if they don't leave, then I'm going to defend myself. You know, I'm going to defend my property, and that's that. I got children here. Don't fuck with me. Don't fuck with my kids, and we'll be cool. You know, like that kind of attitude still has to be taken with all of it, in my opinion. And luckily, I live in a state where they recognize that they recognize that human right, but they still think that they're the ones that are arbitrating it. They're the ones that think that they're the one. They think that they're the ones that are
They own your
providing that
right.
right.
They own your right. They're
Yeah,
giving
like,
it to
oh,
you.
yeah, we give it to you. No, well,
Yeah.
no, you don't give it to me at all. Like that's from on high. You don't have anything to do with that. You're the resistance. You're the one that's getting in the way of me practicing my rights. But I live in a state where right now they've decided to step out of the way and be like, okay, it's cool. Like, yeah, I know it's cool. Thanks. You know, but I don't know. I'm not trying to like solicit for them or anything like that, but it does ease one's mind to know that there isn't somebody that's going to purposefully like step in the way of that in case that were to happen on my property or in my house, that that's that, you know. Don't this is I live in New Hampshire. It does seem like it does seem very much like a fuck around and find out type of state, and people are very polite to one another up here. I live in the state I live in, so I can't remember if it's number 1 or number 2, because Maine, which is right next door to New Hampshire, is also number 1 or number 2. So New Hampshire and Maine are number 1 and number 2 when it comes to lowest crime rates in the entire United States. And New Hampshire has the largest population of gun owners in the entire United States. So it's kind of like I don't know if it's, you know, cause equals correlation, like, or whatever there, but it's very interesting. I think there is a likely relation between the two. It's something that I think about often, where it's like, well, maybe there is, but there's also like, you know, there are gun deaths and everything like that. I've done a show about this earlier this year, I think, maybe even late last year, but it's statistics and everything that are reported and whatnot, you know, homicide rates and everything, gun crimes and homicide rates and whatever are pretty low for this state. And a lot of people are armed up here. Maybe it is one of those situations where an armed society is a polite society. Maybe this is kind of like a like a little bit of a testing ground for that theory, and it's working.
Yeah, how far would I've often thought about that, you know, if the largest percent of the population were armed and understood their ability and need to defend themselves and defend others, and someone started doing a mass shooting, or even like what we've heard about, a mass knifing, like how far would they get? You know, if everybody's armed and just like turns around, you could actually engulf them in a hug if you had enough people, you know, and smash them
I'll tell you,
without even hurting them if you needed to. You know, like if we were, that's what I'm talking about. If we work together, if we were on the same page, these things that we think of as being so deadly wouldn't be so deadly. Like one person with any kind of gun wouldn't be deadly at all. If there's hundreds of people with guns and know how to use them all around, you know, that one person's not a threat, you know?
Well, we can kind of take a look at what happened this past week, this fucking tragic incident in Texas, right? I mean, it's in a school zone. Those are gun-free zones, you know. Maybe for good reasons, maybe because if a child gets a hold of a gun, they can hurt themselves or somebody else because they're not in this day and age, they're not well versed in what it means to be in charge of that type of power, you know. My children certainly don't handle firearms being that little, so I can kind of understand why that type of thing would be in consideration, that maybe we shouldn't have firearms around children as often as that, you know, because there's a lot of kids in that school. Who knows what could happen. It's worth consideration. However, it's still also worth considering that something like what happened in Texas might have not been so severe. The dude was shooting outside the school before he entered the building. If there were somebody in that school, you know, it's Texas, for crying out loud. You're gonna not you, but let's pretend that there's a ghost in this conversation. Like, you're gonna sit there and tell me that in a state like Texas that there aren't multiple employees in that school who have the right or by the state, the whatever license they need. If Texas, I can't even tell you if Texas is one of those states that you need a license in, but I know gun ownership is a big deal down in Texas. You know, they call New Hampshire the Texas of the Northeast. So I just wanted to know if anyone out there with a straight face can tell me that there isn't an employee, a teacher, or a janitor, for fuck's sake, inside that school that would have otherwise been armed if they were allowed to be, if the gun-free zone is unnecessary. Because the dude was outside the school first, shooting at the building. They knew what was about to happen, you know. And it's fucking tragic that that's went down. It's like, what do we do? Oh, you can't just take these things away. I get it that that's like on the list of considerations, you know. Well, what do we do to make sure this never happens again? I honestly don't have an answer to that. But taking away people's firearms is not the solution. It's not the solution at all, because you can also juxtapose what happened in Texas or anywhere else with mass shootings to the multiple mass shootings that happen on a weekly basis in a city like Chicago. And that's a gun-free zone. But the criminals still get guns. So you're not going to pass a law that's going to keep criminals away from firearms. It's not going to happen. They're going to find a way to get it. If people want to go and cause damage and kill someone else, they're going to find a way to do it. Whether it be with a knife or a gun or whatever, a rock, they can do it.
Well, if you ever thought about a car, you know, we give kids the ability to drive at 16-year-old. I mean, you could take out quite a few people if that was what your mind was to do.
Yeah, you can look at
pretty much about as fast as you could with a gun, you know.
You can look at what happened in Waukesha. The dude that drove into a Christmas parade in Waukesha.
Right.
You know, it's like or you can even look at what happened the day after what happened in Texas and West Virginia. Another guy with another rifle came up to a crowd and started shooting into the crowd. There was a woman there armed, and she took out her pistol and she shot the guy and stopped the mass shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea with the fine details of that, because it's very hard to find that type of information right now, you know, because it's all Texas. But there was another incident just the day after in West Virginia, and it was stopped. No one died but the guy that was shooting his rifle into the crowd, because this woman was armed and she knew how to handle a weapon, and she turned around and she put one in the guy, maybe two, who knows, but she stopped it. Yeah. So, I mean,
ultimately, the problem, you know, it's like we were talking about in the beginning. You know, the problem isn't that these things are happening. The problem is that people's minds are so messed up that they're going crazy, that there are people that are losing their minds in our communities, and whether it's by some kind of MK Ultra program, or whether it's in their childhood, if we were like really attentive to one another in our communities, and we knew everybody in our community by name and their children, we would recognize a problem before it got to that point. But we're living in a society where we close our eyes to everything. We expect things to be someone else's problem. Authority is supposed to take care of all these problems, right? They're going to vote it out or create some new law, and that's going to fix it. With that type of thinking, we're never going to get to the problem and clean the oil off our skin so we don't get the breakout. You know what I mean? We're not getting to the actual root of the problem, the moral issue that you and I are talking about, the objective morality, what's right and wrong.
Right.
You can't arbitrate, decision making to other people when it concerns your body or your community or your children. It's not okay for someone who doesn't live there in that community, who directly involved with those people, to be making decisions from far away about what rules or laws they should follow. And as long as we keep believing that that's going to work, we're going to keep having those kind of problems or similar ones, or they'll pop out in a different way, but they're going to be bad, because we're just so far out of balance of the way things work,
Yeah.
Well, we got a long way to go.
Yeah, we sure do. It seems like an uphill battle a lot of times. It seems like the story of Sisyphus, where he was pushing the boulder up the hill only to get to the top and have the boulder roll down the other side of the hill, and then he's forced to go back down there and push the boulder back up the hill only to have it do the same thing. Every time you think you reach a solution, that solution, what's the right solution? Who knows? It's really tough. It's really tough to sit here and want to have an answer for people. I want to have an answer. Like, I'm not the guy. I know I'm not, but I want to talk about it.
You got a piece of it. If we're all sharing a piece of it, then we do get the whole puzzle. Right now, it's not enough people are sharing their piece.
That's the beautiful thing about what you're talking about, is this is how we come to a solution, is by speaking to one another about it, by building community. And I really appreciate what you said about raising the question of, maybe if we had stronger communities, we'd be able to see these types of problems before they get so out of control, where somebody's influenced to go to such lengths. How many times are these shootings, sometimes they get called false flags and everything. I'm not prepared to say that. I'm really not. I'm not. But I mean, at face value, let's take these stories at face value. How many times does it seem like that's just a really, really fucked up kid who's on psychotropic drugs? So I don't know, man. It just seems like we're at another point in time where this old story of gun control and everything is just back in the news cycle, and we gotta figure out where we go from here. But we've already been at it for about an hour and a half now, and I think that it's getting pretty late over here in New England, and Chris, I know we're just kind of calling it. I'm sorry, but
no, it seems about right.
We went on a little bit longer than I think we planned to, so I think that
that's all good.
Fine to just kind of call it right here. And why don't you tell people where to find you, and then I'll give my send off, and then we'll get out of here.
Cool, man. Cool. Yeah, I like great talk, because it's helping me organize my thoughts for what I want to talk about at these conferences in the future. So yeah, you can check out more of my work at endevil.life. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter. Look up End Evil. One Great Work Network. You can find me there. And I'd like people to check out freedomundernaturalllaw.com. And that's where you can register for Funnel 2. That's coming up September 10th and 11th. And really excited about that. So get on there and register, so you'll get information as information comes along. And that's me.
Excellent. I'll make sure to include the links to endevil.life and the funnel website in the show notes. Of course, I'll be including a link to the One Great Work Network, and because both of us are on there, and it's for anyone out there, part of my sign off tonight, anyone out there that's not familiar with onegreatworknetwork.com, I suggest that you go there and become familiar with it, because it's kind of a hub of all of these people. It's Ivan and I were talking about it. It's like Baskin Robbins of truth, 31 different flavors of truth, where you can go there and you can kind of peruse through the different speakers and find one that kind of speaks to you and reaches you in a way that you find appropriate for your own method of learning. And it's very important that that we start breaking away from these tendencies that we've carried throughout our lives and everything like that, because if we really truly want to change the world, it starts with us. We got to point the finger back at ourselves and say, what can I do? Maybe my actions have contributed to some pretty crazy shit, and do I really want to continue and carry on performing bad actions and initiating harm on other people and living things? So anyways, go to onegreatworknetwork.com and figure that out, who you like to listen to, what type of stuff are you into. So but in the meantime, you can continue tuning in here to me, a Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. My name is James Cordiner. You can go to freeyourmindne.com to catch the show at 9 p.m. every Saturday night. And then, go over to shatteringtheillusion.info to learn a little bit more about the conference that Joe Murray and I are organizing. By the way, Chris, you gotta get Joe Murray and you together on a podcast.
Yeah, I can't wait to meet up with Joe.
You guys on a podcast together would be an amazing time. And
Sounds like a plan.
yeah, and he's in the Discord, so you just reach out to him and invite him on. Or do your own thing, whatever. Do what I say. But in any case, yeah, that's it from me, man. That's it. So as I like to say at the end of every show, or I try to say at the end of every show, it all starts now. It all starts today. It all starts, even tomorrow. We got to get out there and talk to people, figure out your community, like what Chris is saying, show people some compassion, show people some empathy, and try to come to an understanding about something that you may have not understood before when it comes to maybe your neighbor or somebody that you might think that you disagree with at first, and try to see through all that shit, because this is all the ways that they get us to hate each other, is to get us at our throats, is through these disagreements and misunderstandings and unwillingness to work through those problems and to cross that bridge together. Maynard James Keenan once had a song. It's called "The Humbling River." It's from his side project called Philosopher, and the line goes, "Open your heart and hands, my son, and together we'll cross this river." And it's a beautiful sentiment to think about from time to time, And obviously, if all of that good stuff that I said doesn't work, arm yourself to the teeth. and do it, and just get ready, because there's going to be a pivotal moment coming up in human history where we have to make a choice, and hopefully we make the right one. So with that being said, everybody out there listening, I love you all, and I hope to see you again next week here. And thank you for tuning in. Good night.